It was the first Saturday of May, 10:22 in the morning, when I found out I had been erased. The sun was pouring through my kitchen window, catching the steam rising from my coffee. I thought it would be an ordinary day. Instead, it was the day I discovered my own daughter didn't want me at her wedding. The envelope had arrived with the mail, cream-colored, thick, elegant. At first I smiled, expecting the official invitation. I ran my fingers over the gold lettering, the faint smell of ink and glue still fresh. But when I opened it, my hands trembled. The list inside wasn't a simple guest card. It was a spreadsheet printed and stapled, likely sent by mistake. Names were typed neatly, row after row. Friends, cousins, colleagues, and my name wasn't there. I scanned it again, slower this time. Surely it was an oversight. Maybe another page was missing, but no matter how I searched, I wasn't on her list. The room seemed to shrink around me. The ticking clock on the wall grew louder. I whispered to myself, there has to be a mistake. But there wasn't. The shock burned sharper than the hot coffee that had turned bitter on my tongue. My own daughter had written out her future, and I wasn't part of it. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Memories flooded in. Sleepless nights when she was a baby, sewing her prom dress by hand, baking her favorite lemon pie every birthday, every sacrifice, every ounce of love, erased with the stroke of a keyboard. Yet even as the tears blurred the page, I noticed something she had overlooked. Tucked behind the printout was an older note, one she must have forgotten to remove. It was a handwritten draft, and on that draft my name was still there, circled once in blue pen. That was the ember of proof. She had erased me deliberately. The question burned louder than the clock on the wall. What makes a child decide her own mother doesn't deserve a seat at her wedding? And more haunting, what would I do about it? The day I found the list, I tried to tell myself it was nothing. Maybe a mix-up, maybe an early draft. But deep down, I knew better. By Sunday afternoon, May 3rd, I was sitting on the church steps after service, watching families file past. The bells still echoed in the air, mingling with the smell of spring flowers from the garden out front. That was when Mrs. Peterson, my longtime friend from choir, leaned close and asked, "So what color are you wearing to the wedding? Everyone's talking about it." I forced a smile, my throat tight. "I haven't decided yet." She nodded, her eyes shining with excitement. "It's going to be the event of the year. Imagine your daughter walking down the aisle." Her words cut like glass. Because in her world, it was unthinkable that a mother wouldn't be there. And in mine, the unthinkable had just happened. Looking back, the signs were there long before the list arrived. There was the night in March when I asked if she needed help with invitations. She laughed too quickly, brushing her hair out of her face. "Oh, don't worry about it, Mom. The planner and I have it handled." I remember feeling a little sting, but telling myself not to press. Another time, I overheard her on the phone. "We'll have about 120 guests. No, she won't be a problem." I asked her later who she was talking about. She shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "Just the caterer. Misunderstanding." I wanted to believe her. That was my flaw. I mistook silence for peace, convincing myself that ignoring red flags would keep us close. Two side characters had been circling this story long before I admitted it. First, there was the wedding planner, a woman named Vanessa. Her goal was efficiency, to keep the wedding perfect and smooth. Her stakes were her reputation. She worked with half the city's high-end brides, but her flaw was coldness. She treated emotions like wrinkles in fabric, something to iron out. The second was my younger son, Matthew. His goal was simple: avoid drama. His stakes were loyalty. He wanted both me and his sister happy. But his flaw was passivity. He never wanted to take sides, even when silence hurt more than honesty. By mid-April, the distance between my daughter and me had grown sharper. She stopped asking me to join her fittings. When I offered to cover the cost of flowers, she smiled politely and said the arrangements were already chosen. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that if I stayed quiet, the space would close on its own. But then came the moment that should have told me everything. It was April 19th, 6:05 in the evening. We were in the kitchen. I had just pulled a roast from the oven, the smell filling the room. She was scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. "Mom," she said casually, "if people ask about the wedding, just tell them you don't know much. It'll be easier that way." I laughed softly, nervous. "But I am your mother. Don't you want me to be excited?" She froze for half a second, then forced a smile. "Of course I do." And then she changed the subject, asking if I had salt. I let it go. My complicity was sealed in that silence. Now, sitting alone in my kitchen with the real guest list in my hand, I could see every moment lined up in painful clarity. The excuses, the deflections, the polite brush-offs. The clock above the stove read 6:42 p.m., the smell of roast still faint on the air. She hadn't forgotten me by accident. She had erased me with intention. And the hardest part to swallow wasn't just that she had done it. It was that I had let her, one silence at a time. The night after finding the guest list, I sat at the kitchen table long past midnight. The lamp buzzed softly above me, the rest of the house silent. My fingers traced over the page again and again, as if my name might appear if I looked hard enough. By morning, I decided I had to know more. On May 5th at 9:10 a.m., I walked quietly into the spare bedroom where my daughter kept her wedding binders stacked high. The air smelled faintly of perfume and paper. My hands shook as I flipped open one of the binders. Inside were seating charts color-coded with pink and blue tabs. I scanned down the family table. Uncles, cousins, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My daughter's father's side of the family, even his second wife, were listed there, but not me. A chill spread across my arms. I was still staring when I heard footsteps on the stairs. My heart jumped. I slid the binder shut just as the door creaked open. She stood in the doorway holding her coffee. "Mom, what are you doing?" I forced a smile, my voice too bright. "Just dusting. Thought I'd tidy up for you." Her eyes narrowed, then softened. "That's sweet, but don't wear yourself out." Her words were honey, but underneath I heard the edge. "Stay out of my business." That evening, she brought it up again. We sat at the dinner table, the clink of silverware echoing in the silence. "Mom," she said lightly, "I know you're curious, but trust me, everything's under control. You don't need to worry about the guest list." I set my fork down. I wasn't worried, Her smile was sharp. "You always worry too much. I just want you to relax." The subtext was louder than her words. "Stop asking questions." I nodded, but inside my chest, suspicion pulsed harder. 2 days later, I tested her. While she was out, I checked the printer tray in the office. Stacks of papers were piled there, smelling faintly of warm toner. Between receipts and schedules, I found an email printout from the planner. It read, "Final list approved. Bride confirmed exclusion." Exclusion. The word burned like fire. I slipped the page into my apron pocket, my heart hammering. But as I turned, my elbow knocked a mug from the desk. It shattered on the floor, porcelain scattering across the rug. The front door opened downstairs. "Mom!" her voice called. Panic jolted through me. I shoved the paper deep into my pocket and bent to gather the shards, my fingers nicked by sharp edges. Blood welled, bright against the white ceramic. She appeared at the door, frowning. "What happened?" "Just clumsy," I said, forcing a laugh. I held up the pieces, my hands shaking. Her eyes lingered on me, searching, but she didn't press. "Be careful," she said finally, turning away. I sat back on my heels, my cut stinging, the paper burning like a secret against my side. That night, lying in bed with a bandaged finger, I replayed it all. The binder, the dinner conversation, the email. Gaslighting had become her weapon. Sweet words covering sharp edges, kindness masking exclusion. I had always believed silence would keep us close, but now silence was being used to erase me. and with every small piece of proof I uncovered, the crack between us grew wider, threatening to split the whole house in two. The first undeniable piece of proof came from a voice I didn't expect. On May 7th, I stopped by the florist downtown to order tulips for my porch. The shop smelled of earth and lilies, the coolers humming in the background. While the clerk wrapped my bouquet, she glanced at me and said, "Are you excited for the wedding? Vanessa just confirmed the flower order yesterday." My stomach clenched. "Vanessa?" "The planner," she replied cheerfully. "She said the mother of the bride wasn't involved in details. Thought that was unusual." Her words sliced deeper than the thorns on the roses. That was link one, from the florist's lips, unprompted. My exclusion wasn't an accident. It was planned and spoken aloud to strangers. Link 2 came the following day in the quiet of the library. I had gone there to distract myself, the smell of old books comforting in a way the house no longer was. While flipping through my bag, I found the email I had hidden, its edges already wrinkled. I slipped it into the copy machine, the warm paper sliding out, proof now doubled. But in my haste, I left the original in the tray. A librarian tapped my shoulder minutes later, holding the sheet. "Ma'am, you forgot this." Her eyes flicked over the bold word exclusion before she handed it back. I muttered thanks, shame prickling my cheeks. I had almost lost the most damning piece of evidence I possessed. My mistake nearly cost me everything. Link 3 came from family. That Sunday dinner, my sister-in-law leaned across the table, her silver bracelets jingling. "I heard from the cousins," she whispered. "They say you're not invited. Is that true?" Heat flooded my face. "Who told you that?" She shrugged. "It's all over the family chat. Claire said it's best to keep things simple, fewer complications." Complications. That's what I had been reduced to. Not a mother, but a complication to be erased. The emotional weight nearly broke me. At night, I opened my cedar chest and pulled out a photo album. There was Claire at 5, holding my hand in her tiny palm. Claire at 16, adjusting her veil at the church youth play, whispering that she wanted me there when she wore the real thing. I pressed my forehead against the album, the scent of cedar and old paper rising up. How had the same girl erased me with a keystroke? But even as grief tore through me, anger stitched me back together. Because proof didn't just wound, it armed me. I started collecting breadcrumbs with purpose. I asked Mr. Collins at the bank, an old family acquaintance, if he had seen any wedding accounts. He nodded. "Yes, your daughter added her fiancé, but she didn't mention you. Most brides do." His note of confusion became another witness in my mind. I overheard bridesmaids chatting in the church hall. One giggled, "Her mom's not even on the seating chart. Can you imagine?" Their laughter stung, but it confirmed the truth was spreading. And then came Emily, my granddaughter. She crawled onto my lap one evening, crayons smudging her fingers. "Grandma, Mommy said there won't be a chair for you at the wedding, but you can sit by me." Right? Her innocence was the heaviest proof of all. Children didn't lie. They only repeated what they heard. By now, the chain was strong. The florist's slip. The email nearly lost at the library. The family gossip confirmed at Sunday dinner. The banker's omission. A child's echo. More than enough to pierce the lies. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, I spread the documents across my kitchen table. The copied email, the florist's receipt, notes scribbled from gossip. The lamp glowed yellow on the stack. I stared at them until my eyes blurred. Grief sat heavy, but beneath it, a reversal stirred. For weeks, I had been powerless, erased, but proof shifted the weight. Now I wasn't just a mother mourning an empty seat. I was a woman holding evidence, prepared to claim my dignity. On May 12th at 11:30 at night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The refrigerator hummed in the dark. The clock ticked steadily on the wall. In front of me lay the stack of proof I had collected, each page lit by the weak glow of the lamp. For weeks I had let grief bury me. I told myself I was powerless, a victim erased by my own child. But as I stared at the papers, something shifted. I realized my silence, my lifelong flaw, didn't have to be weakness. It could be strategy. I had spent years avoiding conflict, smoothing over cracks, believing that love would survive if I kept the peace. And maybe that instinct had cost me dearly. But now, that same quietness could become my weapon. If my daughter thought I was still blind, still passive, she would expose herself further. A memory came flooding back, sharp against the silence. Claire, at 9 years old, standing on a chair in the kitchen, helping me frost a cake. Her laughter rang like bells as she smeared icing across her cheek. She looked up at me and said, "When I get married, you'll make the cake, right?" I can still feel the sugary frosting on my fingers, the warmth of that promise. But now, in the cold present, she had hired a baker, signed contracts, and erased me from her list as if that promise had never been spoken. The contrast hollowed me out, warm past, cold present. Yet in that memory, I also saw her vulnerability. Even as a child, Claire had always feared being judged. She wanted her school projects perfect, her clothes just right. When her father left, she clung harder to appearances. And I began to wonder, was this wedding cruelty only, or was it also fear? Fear that I would embarrass her. Fear that I didn't fit the picture she wanted the world to see. The thought twisted my heart. Villain or frightened daughter. Perhaps she was both. I leaned back, my chair creaking, and whispered into the silence. Quiet doesn't mean erased. Quiet can mean waiting. From that moment, I chose not just to grieve. I chose to observe, to hold my cards close, to let her think she had succeeded. Because the truth was no longer only mine to carry. It was a blade, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. When dawn broke, sunlight streamed across the table, striking the deed, the receipts, the copied email. Dust floated in the beams. I gathered the papers, tucking them carefully into a folder. My hands trembled, but not with fear, with clarity. The war wasn't over. It was only turning. By mid-May, the whispers had spread beyond the walls of my house. At Sunday service, I felt eyes following me as I walked down the aisle. Mrs. Peterson didn't sit beside me like she usually did. Instead, she joined another pew, whispering into her hymn book. I caught the word wedding. After service, 2 women from choir stopped me on the steps. "Are you ready for the big day?" one asked brightly. The other smiled thinly. "We heard it'll be quite the affair." Their cheer felt heavy with subtext. They knew, or thought they knew, and I had no words to offer them except a smile that strained against my cheeks. That was the community subplot pulling tight. My erasure was no longer private, it was public gossip. Back home, the family web tangled too. My son Matthew came by on May 14th, carrying a sack of groceries. We sat in the kitchen, the smell of apples and bread filling the air. "Mom," he said cautiously, "Claire told me you're making this harder than it has to be." I set the bread on the counter, my fingers stiff. Harder? By asking for a chair at my own daughter's wedding? He sighed, rubbing his temples. "She just wants it to go smoothly. She doesn't want drama." "Matthew," I whispered, my voice breaking, "she erased me. How is that not drama already?" He looked away. His flaw was always passivity. I'm not choosing sides. But in his silence, he already had. That evening, Claire returned home with a different tone. She dropped her purse on the table, her heels clicking across the hardwood. "Mom," she said briskly, "I've thought about it. Maybe you can come, just not to the ceremony. The reception, maybe, fewer eyes on us." Her offer stung worse than exclusion itself, a half seat, a consolation prize. For a brief moment, hope sparked. False, fragile hope. But I saw through it. This wasn't an invitation. It was a way to silence me. I nodded slowly, hiding my anger. "We'll see." False resolution. A door cracked open, only to close again. 2 days later, on May 16th, the confrontation grew sharper. Claire stormed into the kitchen where I was folding linens, her voice hard. "I told you not to snoop. Vanessa said you've been asking questions. Stop it, you're embarrassing me." I straightened the stack of towels. Embarrassment doesn't erase truth. She slammed her hand against the counter, the sound echoing. "If you love me, you'll stay out of it. That's what support looks like." Her words dripped with subtext. Love equals silence. Support equals erasure. For the first time, I didn't flinch. "If you love me, Claire, you wouldn't erase me in the first place." Her jaw clenched and she stormed out, the door rattling behind her. That was our micro-conflict, sharp as glass. By May 18th, my nerves were frayed. I kept my folder of proof hidden in the hall closet under quilts. Every day I checked it, afraid it would vanish. That night, returning from the porch, I opened the closet and froze. The folder was gone. Panic shot through me. My chest tightened, air slipping away. I tore through boxes, blankets, drawers, nothing. Had Claire found it? Was everything lost? Finally, in the corner of my bedroom, I spotted the edge of manila peeking from under the dresser. My knees shook as I pulled it free. The papers were still there. Safe. I clutched them to my chest, tears spilling down. That false scare nearly undid me, but it hardened my resolve. No one would touch my truth again. The wider web was complete now. The community whispered, the family fractured, the planner cast me as an inconvenience, and Claire, shifting from sweet to sharp, revealed her true threat mode. I was no longer just erased on paper. I was being erased in gossip, in silence, in the eyes of those who once believed I belonged. But what she didn't see, what none of them saw, was that every exclusion, every whisper, every slammed door only pulled more witnesses into my corner. And soon, the truth would have to stand in the open, no matter how carefully she tried to hide it. The confrontation came on the night of the rehearsal dinner. It was May 22nd, 7:30 in the evening. The hall smelled of roasted chicken and wine, the clatter of silverware mixing with laughter. I stood at the edge of the room, clutching my folder tight. My heart pounded as I watched guests hug, cousins toast, and my daughter float from table to table in her white dress rehearsal gown. She didn't expect me to come. When she finally saw me, her smile faltered. "Mom," she hissed, pulling me aside near the doorway. "What are you doing here?" I looked her in the eye, steady. "I came to take my seat, the one you erased." Her jaw tightened. "This isn't the time, don't make a scene." "Why not?" I said quietly. "You already made one when you erased your own mother from the list." Her cheeks flushed, anger flashing. "You don't understand, I had to. You don't fit the image. I don't want whispers, Mom. I don't want pity looks. I want perfection." There it was. Her mistake. Her rationale, twisted but human. "You think erasing me makes you perfect?" I asked. She glanced around, lowering her voice. "You don't get it. People see you as old-fashioned. You ramble, you cry. I can't risk it. This is my day, not yours." The words stung, sharper than any blade. For a moment, I saw not just a bride, but a frightened child, terrified of judgment. I pulled the folder close to my chest, then let them see the truth. At that moment, her fiancé, Daniel, approached. He looked between us, confused. "What's going on?" Claire's hand flew up. "Nothing. Mom was just leaving." But I stepped forward, my voice steady. "No, I'm not leaving, not this time." I opened the folder and laid the papers on the nearest table. The chatter in the room dimmed as heads turned. "This," I said, holding up the printout, "is the guest list your bride approved. My name isn't on it." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Forks paused midair. Daniel frowned, picking up the page. "Claire, is this true?" She reached for it, but he held it back. "Answer me." Her lips parted, then pressed shut. Finally, she whispered, I didn't want her there. I didn't want anyone distracted. I wanted it perfect. Her words hung heavy. The hall was silent except for the clink of a glass being set down. Daniel's voice was low. You erased your own mother? Claire's face crumpled, then hardened again. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. Everyone's watching. If she cries, if she embarrasses me... Embarrassment? I cut in. My hands shook, but my voice was strong. I raised you alone. I worked nights, baked cakes, sewed dresses, and now I'm an embarrassment? A murmur spread through the crowd. Neighbors, cousins, church friends. Eyes turned sharp toward Claire. Daniel looked at me, then back at her. His voice cracked. Claire, you never told me. I thought your mom was part of everything. I thought she'd walk with you. For the first time, Claire faltered. Her eyes filled with tears, her shoulders sagging, a subtle crack in her armor. I just wanted to be enough, she whispered, her voice trembling. To look like I belonged. If people saw her, they'd see how different I am. How I don't measure up. Her voice cracked, softer now. I thought if I kept control, if I made the day perfect, you'd be proud of me. I was afraid that if people saw the cracks, you'd see them too, and maybe you'd stop loving me the way you used to. For the first time, I saw not just a bride desperate for perfection, but a daughter terrified of losing the only love that had never failed her. The hall was still, the truth echoing louder than any music. I stepped closer, laying my hand gently on the deed copy I had brought, proof of my name and my place. You will never erase me by cutting my name off a list. I am written into your life, in blood and sacrifice, whether you admit it or not. Daniel placed the list back on the table, his voice firm. Your mother deserves her place, Claire. If she doesn't go, neither do I. The crowd gasped. That was the bridge confession, raw and public. Claire's face went pale. She looked at him, then at me, then at the paper in his hand. Shame flickered across her eyes. She whispered, I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it already had. The room seemed to close in. All around, people whispered, heads shaking, hands covering mouths. I gathered my papers calmly, my hands no longer trembling. This isn't about perfection. It's about dignity. And if you can't give it to me, others will. Claire turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. For the first time, she had no words. And in that silence, the truth stood taller than either of us. The days after the rehearsal dinner felt like walking through smoke after a fire. The confrontation had burned through the hall, and now only ashes remained. Word spread faster than wildfire. By Monday morning, May 25th, the phone calls began. Mrs. Peterson from choir rang first. Her voice was tight. I never thought I'd see such a thing. The way she spoke to you, people are shaken. But let me tell you, most stand with you. Her words carried weight. In a small town, community opinion is its own kind of verdict. At the grocery store, I felt stares follow me down the aisle. A young cashier whispered to her coworker, "That's the mother, the one erased from her own daughter's wedding." It should have humiliated me. Instead, I held my head higher, because for once, the shame wasn't mine to carry. The planner, Vanessa, called next. Her voice was clipped. "Mrs. Reynolds, I want to apologize. I followed the bride's instructions, but I regret how this unfolded. It was unprofessional." Her flaw had always been cold efficiency, but now even she cracked. "I'll make sure you have a reserved seat," she added, her tone softer. It wasn't kindness, it was damage control. Still, it was proof that the tide had turned. Family, too, reacted. My sister-in-law dropped by with a pie, her bracelets clinking as she set it on the counter. "You stood tall," she said. "Everyone saw it. She'll have to live with what she did, not you." Even Matthew, my quiet son, returned with words heavier than silence. "I should have spoken sooner," he admitted, eyes down. "I thought keeping peace meant staying quiet. but I see now it only made things worse. I'm sorry, Mom. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something. His arc had closed, finally choosing truth over passivity. Then came the wedding day itself, May 30th. I arrived early, my dress plain navy blue, the fabric soft against my skin. The church smelled of candles and fresh lilies. For a moment, nerves twisted my stomach. But when I stepped inside, people turned, not with whispers this time, but with nods. Neighbors, cousins, even the choir women met my eyes with small smiles of recognition. During the reception, when the music paused, my cousin raised a glass. "To the mother of the bride," he said clearly, who stood tall when others tried to push her down. "Tonight, let's honor her too." The hall erupted in applause, some clapping harder than others, but enough to fill the room with a verdict no one could erase. And there, near the front, was a seat with my name on it. It wasn't draped in ribbons or marked with flowers, just a plain chair with a single card. But as I slid my hand over the paper, I knew it could have been a throne. Because the power wasn't in decoration. It was in the fact that it could no longer be taken away. A simple folding chair, nothing grand. Yet to me, it was more than furniture. It was dignity restored, proof that erasure had failed. The ceremony went on, vows spoken, rings exchanged. I watched with a bittersweet heart, pride and pain tangled together. Claire never looked my way. Her face was composed, her smile bright for the cameras. But I caught a flicker once. When she glanced at the front row, a shadow of regret in her eyes, gone as quickly as it came. That was her crack, small but real. Afterward, as guests spilled into the reception hall, Emily ran up to me, her little shoes tapping against the floor. She tugged at my hand, holding out a folded piece of paper. It was a drawing, a wedding scene, stick figures lined in rows. At the very front, she had drawn me, larger than the others, with a heart over my head. "This is where I put you, Grandma," she said proudly. I pressed the drawing to my chest, tears blurring my vision. That was my true payoff, not the chair in the church, but the seat in my granddaughter's heart. In the days that followed, gossip still lingered. Some shook their heads, some whispered blame, but most said the same. The mother stood her ground. The truth stood taller than the lie. And I realized that sometimes justice doesn't come from a judge or a gavel. It comes from the eyes of those who witness the truth and from the child who still sees you as you are. The house was quiet again when I returned home. I set Emily's drawing on the mantel beside the family photos, a symbol brighter than any invitation that I hadn't been erased, not from history, not from legacy, and never from love. On Sunday evening, June 1st, the house was quiet again. I stood at the dining table with the windows open, letting in the soft smell of cut grass and the hush of crickets starting up for the night. The wedding flowers I'd brought home, white lilies, leaned in a glass jar, their pollen dusting the rim like gold. I unfolded the program from the ceremony and the guest list printout I had once clutched like a verdict. The paper felt different now, lighter somehow. The words hadn't changed, but their weight had. I hadn't vanished. I had taken my seat. Grief sat beside me anyway. It came in small waves, the memory of sewing her prom hem at midnight, the feel of her head on my shoulder when she was little, promising I'd be there on her wedding day. I swallowed hard and let the ache pass through. Then came a quieter feeling, steady, warm, like a hand on my back. Dignity. Not loud, not triumphant. Just there. I thought about the rehearsal dinner, about the silence that fell when the truth landed on the table, about the way my daughter's eyes flickered, the smallest crack, but real. I don't know what will come next. Maybe an apology. Maybe a longer winter before any thaw. Love is stubborn. So is pride. Sometimes they sleep in the same room. I set the guest list down and picked up a blank sheet of paper. I wrote 3 sentences, then crossed them out. I tried again, slower this time, choosing gentle words without letting them bend the truth. I didn't write to plead for a seat. I wrote to set a boundary. I will not be erased. I will show up when invited in good faith. I will step back when my presence is used as a weapon. That is the shape of love I can live with now. The front door clicked, and Emily padded in, still in her small party shoes. She climbed into the chair beside me and slid a folded page across the table. A new drawing. 2 rows of chairs, a bride and groom in the center. At the end of the front row, she drew me again, larger than before, with a little crown of yellow scribbles that looked like light. "Grandma," she said, tapping the page, "if I make a list one day, I'm putting you first." I laughed through tears. "That's a good list," I whispered. As I folded Emily's drawing, I realized something I hadn't before. Love and pride will never share the same chair. But dignity can stand beside either, and that's where I choose to sit. Later, as dusk deepened and the lilies sweetened the room, I tucked the old printout and her new drawing into the same envelope. The past and the promise, side by side. If this were your story, if your child cut your name from the happiest day of her life, would you forgive quickly, trusting that small crack to widen into change? Or would you hold the line until real amends are made? Which seat would you choose? The one closest to reconciliation, or the one that protects your dignity until the door opens honestly?